There is new information just in on the search for this person who killed healthcare CEO Brian Thompson 24 hours ago. Words very much written on shell casings of rounds found at the scene. There had been some confusion in some places about that. This law enforcement sources tell CNN that two words were found: delay and deposed. Depose was written on a shell casing from a round that was fired at the victim. Delay was written on a live round not fired but ejected when the shooter appeared to be clearing a jam. There are images of the suspect at Starbucks, also leaving a subway station. Police also have video obtained by the New York Times of him talking on a phone just minutes before the murder. This, as Thompson's widow now reveals to NBC, quote, "I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people that had been threatening him." But let's get to the shell casing and the words written on them. With us now, CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller. You've got new information and also, I think, a new visual representation of what we're talking about here.
Well, sure. So Depose is written on a round that was fired. So that's a shell casing that's found on the ground, and they find these tiny letters on it. Delay is found on a live round. That's a full bullet that he probably ejected trying to clear that jam. Those are the two words they found, but investigators doing research into what could this mean, delay, depose, found the maxim of deny, delay, depose, variations of the maxim deny, delay, defend, which is actually the name of a book. These are sayings, and you can find them all over the internet and Reddit and other postings about insurance company practices of trying to find ways out of paying on claims that they are disputing. So what they believe is the killer was sending a message. Now this is a 9mm round. This is the shell casing, the silver part, the copper part is the actual bullet. And to write something on something this small, and I mean, John, picture how you would try to do that. Would you take a fine point Sharpie? Would you try to scratch it in? It means someone went to a lot of trouble to try and create this message that would be left at the scene. Now, he's missing the third word. So if this is the maxim he's trying to tell us about, is that bullet still in the magazine, remaining unfired, that left with his getaway? Is it on one of the other shell casings, but it burned off as it was fired and ejected? We don't know that yet.
Yeah, but two of the three, and as you say, would require just a very high level of deliberateness here. So what does that tell investigators as they are very much engaged in this manhunt 25, 26 hours later?
Well, it tells them, it gives them an answer and raises a question. The answer it gives them is, you have a killer who is trying to send a message. The question is, what does the message really mean? What you can glean from it, if the target was carefully selected, the head of a major healthcare insurance entity is it directed at UnitedHealthcare? Is it directed at that CEO? Or is this a killer who is targeting the insurance industry, which has caused everybody from hospital executives to insurance providers yesterday to start doubling and tripling the security around their top people?
Yeah, I was going to ask that, because if you have someone trying to send a message out there on the loose, which clearly they do, I mean, if you're going to write something on a shell casing, you are trying to send a message there, you then have to take next steps to try to figure out how to protect people.
Well, that's right. And, my phone was ringing yesterday from heads of security and from security companies saying, what do we think about the targeting in this case? Do executives have to worry? Where can we get the kind of increased security details in close personal protection till we have a better understanding of this? Those wheels started turning yesterday morning. They're turning faster today.
All right. These developments keep on happening at a furious pace. John Miller, we're lucky to have you here. Please keep us posted throughout the next hour.
Thanks, John.
Kate?
And joining us right now is former U.S. Marshal John Muffler and former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis. Ed, let's start where John and John just left off, talking about the question of personal security. Some detail that we got from UnitedHealthcare was that UnitedHealthcare was aware of threats to top executives. Brian Thompson was never named specifically, but a source familiar with the company's security does tell CNN the leadership team at UnitedHealth Group is supported by an in-house security team, including at the New York conference, but Thompson's security detail was not with him yesterday morning. What does that mean? What does that add into this?
Well, it's very troubling. The provision of security personnel is really a risk and compliance question. Each of these operations as a compliance and risk department. They should be having these conversations. And if he does have a security function, he either said, I don't need it in New York. It's expensive to have a team travel with you and put them up. So sometimes executives say, I'll have a detail at my house, but I'm not going to have any protection while I'm traveling, because they live under the false assumption that nobody understands where they are. But this is a public meeting, a publicly advertised meeting, location and time. Everyone knows that he will be there. It's a very simple equation for someone stalking someone online and doing research to put together that this could be a good place. And notwithstanding the cameras, it's a very easy task to find them and then to do whatever it is that you want to do with them.
And John, how does this manhunt shift now as we pass the 24-hour mark since this guy's been on the run?
Well, I think they have great leads. I'd imagine at the next presser there'll be more information. Clearly, they have a list of clues that they're running on, and are aware of the direction he traveled and the way he did it. My assumption is that he was there a day or so, if not longer, in advance, conducting pre-attack surveillance. So it'd be a good time for NYPD to look at those cameras in that location. Could be a time where he wasn't wearing a mask, a day of the shooting. So I think there's some good clues there. I think there's some understanding of warning behavior typologies that he's exhibited, like fixation, pathway to violence, that they can run on and look at as clues to where he may be and where he may be going.
I want you both also to weigh in on what John Miller was just reporting about the fact that law enforcement sources tell CNN the two words that were found on shell casings: delay and depose. Depose written on a shell casing from a round that was fired into the victim. Delay written on a live round that was not fired but believed to be ejected when the shooter, he appeared to be clearing a jam. And those words are really all over the internet, from people angry at the healthcare industry. Blogs, articles, in various combination, using these words as critical of the healthcare industry. John, what do you do with this? How do you help this try to narrow your search for who you could be looking for?
Well, obviously, there's just two words that they found, and I agree with John Miller that very likely there are other words in that magazine, but it's an indication, again, of that behavior leading up to the attack, and there's some giveaways there. So I think, again, looking at that type of leakage of the words he's using, many of school shooting attacks and other workplace violence attacks, there's leakage, and meaning that others in that person's environment are aware of such terminologies. And, those people who are watching CNN and other news media, they see that face, hear those words, thinking oh, he did make a post. I knew a guy made a post, or a family member, a loved one. So I think those are going to help those in that person's life, maybe report to law enforcement those pre-clues.
That is interesting. Ed, what do you think of that?
Well, John's exactly right. It's a great clue. And if someone has heard him use those words before and sees that picture, especially of his face in the Starbucks, they would be able to put two and two together and get in touch with law enforcement, hopefully. But the other thing is you have to also think about the fact that he may have been leaving more of a message. I think it's unusual that someone that well prepared and effective inadvertently dropped a cell phone at the scene. It sometimes takes a day or two to get into those phones. I'm wondering what messaging is on that cell phone. Is someone trying to explain themselves with a burner phone that might have one or two pages of information on it? That's something we have to look out for. And we also have to keep in mind that this could be a feint. It could be purposely putting detectives off the track of the real motive. So you'll have to keep all options open in these cases. Absolutely
right. John, do you assume he is no longer in Manhattan, or do you think he's more likely still in Manhattan?
These are great questions. Tracking fugitives, these can last days to months, and so it's really hard to tell at this point. I am very interested in looking at his travel out to Central Park on that bike that was GPS coordinated, and again, he's going to have pre-attack surveillance fingerprints, again indicating where he may be now, that he may be held up somewhere to let this cool down and then try to leave New York City, or maybe he's already exited New York City. But those are some really good clues for NYPD to track on. So who knows at this point? Who knows?
Thank you both so much, as always. Ed, it's great to see you. John, great to see you as well.